go. Welcome everyone to week 5 of CAA Today. I appreciate that, Scar. Thank you very much. We'd like to welcome our guests, Skip from Holy Cross and Scarsden from Maine, Erica East Week here on CAA Today. Everyone, put your hands together and give a warm welcome to our guests.
Appreciate that.
Thanks.
We're going to begin this with our Week 5 recap. Week 5 out of conference week. It was a great week for the CAA overall, going 9-3. We actually had some differing opinions here on what our CAA game of the week was. Anyone want to give their suggestion first?
So, I'm going to go with my game, with number 24, Western Carolina. It was very back and forth. I won on a last-second touchdown with about a minute and 5 left, 152-49. Got a couple lucky breaks.
It's a hell of a game.
I'm going to go with another game involving a Delaware team that also came down to the wire. I'm actually going to change my vote here. I had Towson versus Davidson, but I'm gonna talk about that one more later. I'm going to give this game of the week to Delaware against North Dakota State. Delaware was a top 25 team this week, and they got scored on with about a minute left. It looked like it was all over for them. With 19 seconds left, scored on a 4-play drive to win that one. For those of us who tuned into that fourth quarter, that was incredibly exciting. So that's going to be my vote for game of the week here.
Yeah, I'll agree with you there with the Delaware, North Dakota State, high scoring back and forth, fourth quarter comeback. Those are always exciting. High ranked Delaware team against not such a high ranked North Dakota State. Very entertaining, and that's my game of the week as well.
Yeah, that's my pick as well. I didn't follow as many of the games this week, but catching not just what was going on in the game, but some of the reactions from those involved. It was an intense follow and a classic fourth quarter, which always ups the standing of a game.
Yeah, I'm with you all there. I originally last week I made a mistake. I said NDSU was an air raid team, but they are an option team, as is Delaware. And yeah, pretty good game. Featured 0 passing yards and over, I think, 600 yards, 700 yards rushing. Great game by both coaches.
I'll give a shout out to Edge, who is going to be joining us a little bit later, I believe. But he had Towson versus Davidson as his game of the week. And you got to give Towson some love. Towson's 0-4 coming into this one. They pull off a huge upset at home against an unbeaten Davidson team. Anytime you see an Australian coach get a win over a ranked and undefeated team, you got to love that. So that was Edge's game of the week. Moving on, the next game we had was the game Matt mentioned, Western Carolina at Delaware State. Matt, you want to give us your thoughts on your game here?
So, game was probably the most stressful one I've played so far. I couldn't move the ball for like the first quarter and a half, and all of a sudden I scored 28 points, and it's just back and forth. And then the third quarter, I built a nice lead, and then immediately blew it. So that was fun. Overall, just a great game that had over 900 passing yards in it.
It seems like Delaware State only knows how to play in close games. They seem to have an opportunity to win every game in the fourth quarter. And it certainly makes for exciting action. Next up, we had Duquesne at Holy Cross. This was the sore spot of the week for the CAA. Duquesne had it close at halftime. It was 14-0, but a huge third quarter from Holy Cross really put the game away for good. I don't know if you want to comment on your destruction of a CAA team.
Yeah, well, the score didn't really dictate the flow of the game. We both were driving a lot, but there was a lot of turnovers in each red zone, a lot of turnovers on special teams. So the score really doesn't give you a good idea how close it was. Fortunately, I was able to have a big third quarter, and they're a very good team. Don't be too low on a big loss like that. They'll be around for sure.
The fighting Kenny Duchesne's were hurting after that loss. I know that one.
To speak regarding Holy Cross, Holy Cross beat me last year in a 14-6 all defense game. So him saying, so many turnovers in a game, that's perfectly characteristic of that coaching style.
Glad you noticed. Yeah.
Next up, we have James Madison and Alabama State.
Well, I'm here, and I'm just gonna say, I was not playing well throughout the game. I had a couple of costly mistakes. Had a fourth down, at 4th and 2, I think, at the ASU 12, and I totally choked. But then a 20-point fourth quarter, where my defense stood up, made a couple stops, forced a couple good punts. I even muffed a punt, but then forced another punt that I got back. So tons of good play all around in defense for that 20-0 fourth quarter, and the game ends 47-35 in favor of Jamie. So good to get back in the win column this week.
Absolutely, never hurts to put a loss on an ASON team as well. Next, we had Lafayette and Morgan State. Ryland and Morgan State just continues to churn out wins. This was not an easy game for Morgan State at all, but they seemingly always find a way to win. They're 4-1. Their only loss being on a 2-point conversion rather than kicking a PAT to send it to overtime. Looks from the early returns in the coaching just poll like Morgan State might finally sneak into the top 25 week and get the respect they deserve.
Yeah, totally agree. I ranked Morgan State, and I really hope like a ton of people did. Looking at that early poll, it looks like they did, and I'm glad to see Ryland finally getting the respect that he deserves.
I agree that he's finally hopefully going to get the respect he deserves. I haven't submitted mine yet, but he's probably going to be in my top 15 teams this week. He's really good.
Yeah, I agree. Turn our attention next to Richmond at Lamar. This was an interesting game. In the initial Richmond at Lamar game, neither coach was really participating a whole lot, and it ended with Lamar delay of gaming out. Set up again with subs playing for both teams. Had Jocks playing as Richmond. In the second quarter, Richmond also had a PAT at the deadline, sent it to overtime, but went for 2 instead, and did not get it. So Richmond falls by 1, 14-13 to Lamar.
I think it was last week. I mentioned that William and Mary I think it was 2 weeks ago actually. William and Mary had a tainted win, and I know Purple really loved the sound of that. But for me, this is kind of like a tainted loss because Spider Squad couldn't really get going and had to get a sub. So I didn't drop Spider Squad down in our coach's power ranking poll that we put out. So yeah, like Bevo said, there is that little asterisk.
Yeah, for sure. Similar game, we had Southeast Missouri against Robert Morris. Hard to really read a whole lot into this one. The game didn't get to halftime. Actually, it didn't even get halfway through the first quarter. Robert Morris gets a win, and they'll take it for sure, but not a pretty game at all.
Good job by Depp. He scored 28 points in less than a quarter.
I think he had like 60 yards and about a minute of possession and somehow scored 28 points with the delay of games.
Good on him, but it sucks that it didn't get out of the first quarter.
Yeah, I kind of wanted that game to play out, see how badly RMU would beat SEMO.
Acronyms in that game as well. Initials. Okay, so we talked a little bit about this game. Davidson at Towson. This was one of many games around the country that sent shockwaves through FFCS ranks this week. Towson comes into this one winless, but they use the home crowd to their advantage and take down undefeated and previously 8th-ranked Davidson.
Oh, look, I really, really was excited about this game. I've always been a big believer of, you got to break a few eggs to make a good omelette. And I'm glad that omelette resulted in a big win for my team today. Just seeing on that, just a bit of comment on that home crowd as well too. Because of the current restrictions, they were mainly cardboard cutouts, like they're doing in the NRL at the moment. You can buy one for $22 if you so wish. But was an excellent game for my team. I think I just had to really. There was a big responsibility for me to really active manage the game. I didn't do that on the first drive because I tried to go for a big turnover on 4th and 5th. Also, I had a turnover on the 4th and 5th on my own 30, but then I managed to force a fumble and recovery on my own 20, which then resulted in a touchdown. And it was just pretty much just clock management, game management from there. They tried an onside kick to try and get back in the game, which then turned it over to a 45-yard touchdown. Big props to my running back, Mal Meninga. 19 runs, 190 yards, four touchdowns. And then to my safety, Adam Goods, who made 19 tackles and 1 forced fumble as well. So, as I said last week, big statement game. There it is, everyone. Watch out.
Yeah, I think I'll be speaking for a consensus, not just for the CAA, but for anyone that knows Mr. D and knows like the amount of close games that he's had. This was very well deserved, and you very much deserve that win. Yeah, that's all I got.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
So we have North Carolina A&T against Villanova. This was an interesting one. I didn't expect NC A&T to keep it interesting, but they did. They put up 24 points in the fourth quarter after having just 7 points through the first 3 quarters. Cats were able to hold on for an 11-point victory, however. They get above 500 for the first time this
year. Something about CAA teams and allowing big fourth quarters, but nonetheless, a good job by Edge here.
Definitely. I know he's finally starting to get the respect that he deserves as well after what was a tough start to the season. So this was a good win for him. We'll turn our attention to the defending CAA champs game. VMI hosted Wofford. I really expected VMI to use this game as a turning point and get their season back on track. The wheels continue to come off, and VMI had a valiant comeback bid in the second half. Fortunately, the hole that they had dug themselves in was too big, and they do not get a victory against Wofford.
VMI was recovering for a little bit, and they just kind of fell off again. I don't see. No disrespect to the greatest name in FFCS, which is the Poop Eater, but I don't see them recovering from this. It might be a tough season going on from here.
Agree. Next, we had Bobo's game, William and Mary. They traveled to the capital of New York, Albany. This game didn't get to the finish line. I believe Albany changed coaches midweek. William and Mary did have a comfortable lead when this one went final. And Bobo gets to 3-2. He's quietly above 500 and playing well, leading his division right now in the CAA.
I'm leading my division? What the hell? I didn't even know. That's
I think
hilarious.
you're the only 2-0 team in that division, if I remember correctly. So
Delaware.
That's
Delaware's
amazing.
too.
Delaware as well. Okay, co-leading with Delaware.
Wow. Yeah. No, that was a fun game for us. Yeah, we the original Albany coach 3 straight delay of games on the coin toss, and we didn't get a sub for a few days, especially with everything going on. I've been a little distracted, so I didn't get to finish that game out. But yeah, it felt good. It's from 0-2 to 3-2. It feels good, definitely.
Yeah, William and Mary trending in the right direction for sure. So next we'll turn to Scar's game. I traveled to Maine to take on the Bears. This was a rematch of the Ocho championship game from last season. Familiar foe here for the Penguins. And Maine hung around. This was an interesting game. There really no point in the game where YSU broke it open. Just unfortunately too much offense, the Penguins for Maine.
Yeah, you put up over 400 yards on me. I think I made one stop in the 1 or 2 stops the entire game. I had 1 turnover late. Additionally, your touchdowns were all, well, not all, but you had 2 50-plus yard touchdowns. A lot of big plays. I had 1 43-yard touchdown early on a fake punt. And my other 2 touchdown drives were 15 plays and 14 plays. Both took up about 2.5 minutes of game clock, and the second one was in hurry up. So running down 2.5 minutes of clock in hurry up is never advantageous to a win. My running game was doing nothing. My free safety, who had the fake punt, was my leading rusher. I had some good plays on fourth down. Went 5 for 8 on fourth down, including a touchdown right before half. Two 25-yard grabs by freshman tight end Nigel Porter. Wasn't enough. Couldn't get the run defense working. Couldn't make a stop. Props to Bernie. He was a great opponent in the Ocho final. He was a great opponent this past week.
Thanks, Gar. It was a lot of fun. Certainly enjoyed that one and our first matchup as well. Hopefully, this will be a continued series in the years to come between Maine and YSU. We certainly
Hopefully,
enjoyed it.
right now though, 2 and 3,
right.
trying to turn it back around.
Yeah, well, you head back into conference play, so always an opportunity to right the ship when you're playing the conference.
Yeah, against Central Connecticut State, who breaking the fourth wall for a bit. I'm just starting graduate school at Central Connecticut State.
Wow, so a little bit of an advantage. You'll know the team. You'll know the way that they do business.
Yeah.
Game of the week was North Dakota State at Delaware. Just so it's fresh in everyone's chat here, reposting that game. This was a really exciting fourth quarter. Multiple lead changes back and forth. NDSU scored to take the lead with 1:07 to go, and it looked like it was all over for Delaware. But as I mentioned earlier, 4-play drive gets Delaware into the end zone with 19 seconds left to seal the victory.
Yeah, that was a great game. Actually, looks like Sarah was actually here, so I'll say something.
Yeah.
Great game, honestly. That last drive was insane. I was kind of just scrolling through that and just seeing some great play calls there. Such a great game.
Interesting to see there was 0 total passing yards. That really doesn't usually add up for a great game, but this one obviously did.
Delaware currently sits second to last in the CAA, averaging 1.8 passing yards per game. I believe they've thrown the ball once for 3 yards, if I'm not mistaken. They're only bested in that category by Youngstown State, who has yet to throw the ball this season.
Additionally, just again going through the stats now, Delaware had nearly 500 yards, nearly double NDSU's yards, 485 to 262. So just for a team to give up that many yards and be in it by one score, it takes defensive plays in key moments. And I wasn't around following the game the entire time, but that must have been.
I think you're definitely right there. So the next segment we'll move into here is called "What Did You Get Wrong?" where we look back at the predictions we made last week and discuss what we were mistaken about. So I actually predicted that YSU would lose this week. I thought that Maine, having the advantage of circling this game on the calendar after the Ocho, would get one over on YSU here. I also had Western Carolina winning, so apologies to Matt that I didn't believe in Delaware State. And as I mentioned, I thought VMI would pull it out this week.
I had Holy Cross winning, but I had them winning by 3 and not by 42. I also called myself losing against Turk, which obviously that didn't happen. I'm not complaining about that. Can't complain about a win. Also, I called an Albany win, but that was with the coach that beat Maine. So I'm going to let that one slide because of the coaching change.
I had Duquesne and Davidson winning, and that obviously didn't happen as Duquesne lost by 42. I want to say I also had Mary getting blown out by Albany. That exactly didn't work. Didn't exactly work.
Yeah, I definitely didn't expect Duquesne to lose by that much. It was, again, the score didn't really dictate how close the game was. I also didn't expect FAMU to lose. They're a pretty good team, tenured coach, popular in Discord, and I did not see that one coming for sure.
That was another really exciting game. Scoring 100 points put up in that one with Butler. Our next segment here is Coach of the Week. And this one seems like a pretty easy choice. I'm going to give my CAA Coach of the Week to Towson here, getting their first win. 0-4, a little misleading since Towson took over at 0-2. But a huge win for Towson. So Mr. D, Coach of the Week.
Yeah, winless, beating undefeated. You don't see that often. You got to give it to him.
I'm gonna give it to Mr. D too. He just thoroughly was on. He had Davis's number all game. It's a good job all around.
Oh yeah, it's Mr. D all day. No question about it. Very much deserving.
I know Edge agreed. Edge also had Towson. I'll throw that out there for him as well. Next up is Stat of the Week. Skip, you had your own Stat of the Week this week. I'll let you take the floor.
Most people usually pick, a player that had a great week, whether it's on offense or defense, but 9 ranked losers this week. That says a lot. This shows this league is a lot of parity. That's unbelievable. I don't know what the record is in a week for ranked losers, but 9's got to be up there. We're going into week 6, so even the 0-5 teams can come back to 7-5 maybe. But 9 ranked losers, that says a lot about the rest of us. We can make a comeback here if we're below 500 or whatever. That was a surprise to me. That's easily my Stat of the Week.
Yeah, I agree with you. That was pretty telling. I'll turn it over to Dor at this point.
Oh yeah. So that was gonna be my Stat of the Week. Also, I kind of just want to take a look. Not many people go through the Constitution and they don't look at the leaderboards page enough. So I just kind of want to take you guys through the leaderboards page right now. So points per game, total offense, and pass offense. Those are all led by Matt at Delaware State. 43 points, 447 yards, 426 pass yards. Delaware leads rush offense with 356 yards per game. And Nova has a 2 turnover margin along with Morgan State. Points allowed, Bernie's at the top with 23.2. Towson coming in with the best defense with 268.6 yards given up per game. The best pass defense belongs to Richmond with 89.6 yards per game. The best rush defense belongs to William and Mary, both of them with 90.2 yards per game rushing. And also average time of possession is being led by William and Mary with 16 minutes per game on average, which is a decent chunk of a game, to be honest.
Absolutely. Those are some good stats. And do you want to take us through CAA Player of the Week here?
Oh yeah, I guess that's my segment too. Don't have a graphic this week. I will see about that. Try to get that to Danny. But our offensive player of the week is Delaware State's quarterback Terrell Frank. This is his 3rd offensive player in the week in a row. This week, as Bernie just posted, 57 for 75, 553 yards, 5 touchdowns, 1 pick. And our defense, coming from a new team that just implemented stats this week actually, it's Ryland's Hosea Robinson, the cornerback for Morgan State, with 20 tackles, 2 picks, and 2 sacks. I don't know if anyone plays fantasy fake college football here, but he's a player to have on your team.
Absolutely. Next up is CAA Power Rankings as voted on by the coaches of the CAA. And so we have Delaware leading the way again this week, 59 points overall, 4 first place votes. Close race for 2nd and 3rd here. Youngstown State with 2 first place votes, second by 1 point. Oregon State is 3rd with 60 points. Villanova is quietly moving up the rankings, 4th place with 53 points. They'll take on the number 1 ranked Delaware Blue Hens this week. William and Mary sits 5th, 40 points. James Madison, 36. Duquesne slides into the 7th spot with 32. Behind Duquesne is Delaware State in 8th with 30 points. Just 1 point off of Delaware State is Richmond in 9th. At a tie for 10th between Towson and the defending champ VMI. And bringing up the rear is Robert Morris with 11 points.
Robert Morris in 12th is a bit of a surprise for me here. I thought he would be ahead of Towson and VMI, but I guess that's what the coaches wanted.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you there. I had Robert Morris at 9. And I also had myself at 8. I do not know how I got all the way up to 6. I guess beating an ASUN team that just kind of has that name recognition with it. But I very well, as you guys will see my match next week, I very well expect to be sliding back down.
It's been, it's actually pretty tough to move up these CAA rankings. I mean, look at Towson, who just beat a undefeated team. I know it's their first win in the season, but they couldn't rise higher than 10th in the power rankings with a win over a top 10 team. And obviously VMI has struggled, but they're getting no respect as the defending CAA champ, also tied for 10th. Even a team like Delaware State, who is coming off back-to-back wins and just beat a ranked team, can't find higher than 8th. So, you really have a tight race here for the pack in the CAA power rankings. Next up, we'll discuss the most surprising Week 5 upset. Had a few candidates here, as Skip was mentioning. 9 ranked teams go down. Who did you think was the most surprising upset from the following? Number 20, Stony Brook defeats number 6 NAU 45-35. Southern Illinois takes down number 7 North Carolina Central 47-31. Wilson defeats number 8 Davidson 27-22, or Elon defeats number 9 Southern Utah 31-24.
I'm going to go with SIU winning. I was not expecting Ham to beat Junie by that much. Ham was getting his butt kicked in every single week, and he comes out and beats them by 16. So, huge surprise, especially against, I think it was the number 5 or number 18 in the country. Big surprise.
Number 7.
Yeah, I'm going to go with you as well. I also said NCCU. SIU has had a tough season. I expected NCCU to roll in this one. Obviously, they did not. A couple of scores.
Yeah, I'll go with it.
Oh, go ahead, Skip.
I was just going to say the Towson game. A lot of Towson love today, but I mean, unranked against number 8, winless versus undefeated. I don't know how that's not the most surprising.
I was with you there. I was thinking Towson Davidson, but I kind of called that last week, so I had to go SIU over NCCU. Also, margin of victory. That's a lot of points to beat a top 10 team by.
Sure. So it's everyone's favorite segment, contender and pretender. Contender this week was Cal Poly. Fruity's a really good coach. They beat a talented Jacksonville State team this week. So I'm giving my contender to Cal Poly. My pretender is Southern Utah. I think they got exposed a little bit this week. Their strength of schedule hasn't been that strong. I know they came in at 4-0, but we'll see if Southern Utah can right the ship. But I think they're my pretender of the week.
Yeah, I think for my contender, I have Delaware. They just keep finding ways to win. No matter what you do, they just keep winning. And my pretender is also Southern Utah. Their strength of schedule, I think, is bottom 2 or 3 in the country. It's not good.
All right.
Speak for Edge. Oh, go Skip. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, my contender was Campbell. They had a close game with a very highly ranked Yale. So that's a quality loss. I don't know how everyone values quality losses, but they're definitely a contender in my eyes. And my pretender is Northern Colorado. They're not in a very good conference, and they had an embarrassing loss to Stetson. So being ranked with an embarrassing loss, I'm not sure they qualify for a real contender. So they're my pretender.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm going to run through edges here for him. He has a CAA focus in his contender and pretender this week. His contender is Morgan State. We've given Morgan State some love on this pod, but he says Ryland just keeps winning, and his only loss was by 1 point to Villanova. So Morgan State is his contender this week, and his pretender is Duquesne. He said this is the easy answer in conference, but he thought Duquesne could sneakily be one of the best teams in the conference, and obviously that did not pan out.
Yeah, I'm with Edge there on the contender. I had Ryland. Same reasons. He only lost by 1 point to Villanova. And also my pretender was OSU kid, SUU, who we had on the pod last week. That strength of schedule is really bad, and now they're like 50th in the composite rankings. So, yeah.
We'll turn our attention from week 5 to week 6. Looking forward to another battle for Appomattox week here in the CAA. So we're going to discuss our CAA game of the week. I think this one is a pretty easy choice. I'm going to go with Delaware and Villanova. Villanova, a team that could get into the rankings or should get into the rankings, were able to match a victory here against Delaware. Probably one of the better 3-2 teams in the country. Delaware might be a top 10 team this week. So this, to me, the easy choice for CAA game of the week.
Yeah, with you there. Both teams on top of their divisions.
Yeah, I can't argue that.
I'm gonna have to agree with you. Two really good teams. Should be a good game.
A clean sweep for Delaware and Villanova. This, as we mentioned, this is a battle for Appomattox week. This time, all of the CAA South travels to the CAA North for another matchup. This week ended 3-3. The South does have a margin of victory advantage by outscoring the North by a combined 27 points. So if it comes down to that tiebreaker, the South is leading right now. Just a little fun nugget of CAA history here for those of you CAA historians at home. Four of these matchups are firsts in CAA history. First game, we'll talk about our game of the week, Delaware at Villanova. Delaware is obviously going to be very highly ranked. Villanova leads the conference in turnover margin. Delaware is -5 on the season in turnover margin. I think that's actually going to make the difference in this one. Villanova, with the extra possessions, pulls off an upset 28-24.
Yeah, so this is going to be a close game. Both teams are coming in hot, but I think Delaware is going to come out on top on a late score. I'm not going to guess the score, but Delaware will win, and part of it's going to be because of their patented 4th and 5 versions.
I'm with Bernie here. Nova 31-24 upset.
Predictions from our guests on this game, or should we move on to the next?
I like Delaware here. I think they're the more dominant team. They're highly ranked. I think they'll handle their business. It might be close, but I think Delaware will come out on top.
Sense. That's a good pick. Next, we'll go to Delaware State at Morgan State. Delaware State is 1-0 all time against Morgan State. And as we discussed, they're the offense averaging the most yards per game. Morgan State is the offense averaging the second fewest yards per game. I think Delaware State controls this game, but Ryland makes enough plays to keep it close. I think Matt keeps his fourth quarter heroics going here and pulls out a 31-28 win to Morgan State.
So I picked myself to win 2 weeks in a row, and I won 2 weeks in a row. I'm gonna pick myself again this week. I'm gonna keep riding it, hopefully. I think it's gonna be a shootout. I'll say 49-45 because my defense is, I think, bottom 10 in the country right now. So it'll be a fun game. There's another little nugget. I did petition Baba to have this be the early game this week, so that could be fun if we get the early slot.
I'm actually going to go against you here, Matt. I think you're going to be down in the fourth quarter, start the usual fourth quarter heroics train. But I think in the end, you're going to fall short just because of the way Ryland plays and how Ryland can control the clock when he wants. So give me Morgan State 38-35.
Yeah, I think I'll take Morgan State as well. I know Delaware State's a high-powered passing offense, but with all that passing, there's bound to be some turnovers in there. I think Morgan State can pull this one out.
Edge was also on the Delaware State bandwagon here. He said that Ryland has been rolling with 100 lower on his 2-point conversion, would be 5-0 right now. It's hard for him to bet against Morgan State, but he does think they're due for a loss. So he had 55-49 Delaware State in the shootout this week. Our attention to Richmond and Duquesne. Duquesne is looking to rebound after a drubbing from Holy Cross last week. Richmond is hard to get a read on. Their head coach 2-2 this season in games that they've controlled. Started out 2-0. They've dropped their last 3. Those losses were by a combined 3 points. I think if Richmond stays active enough to actually see this game to completion, they get the win 42-28.
I agree with you that Richmond's probably going to win, but I don't think it's going to be by that much. Probably something like 24-17 or 31-24.
I'll say Duquesne. I think they'll have a comeback after last week. They're better than the score shows, so I think they'll come back and put it to the Spider gang. Spider squad.
I'm with you there. Kind of like you said, a lot of kind of mistakes. So their loss isn't as big as it comes out to see, as you see, sorry. So I have Duquesne by 2 scores. Also throwing in the fact that Richmond has had a little bit of timing issues. So yeah, give me Duquesne by 2 scores.
Next up, James Madison travels to Ohio to take on Youngstown State. SMU has looked good these last couple of weeks. They had a close loss against Robert Morris, a big win last week against Alabama State. This will be a contrast of styles. James Madison averages 335 yards passing. ISU averages 334 yards running. This one will be closer than you might think just looking at the records of these teams. I have YSU coming out 38-28.
I think that JMU is definitely better than their record, but I still think the options can be too much for them. I'll say they'll lose by either 10 or 17.
Yeah, I think Youngstown State is going to have a dominant victory. Again, JMU had a lot of passing yards. That's bound to have a lot of turnovers. Youngstown State has a dominant defense. They force a lot of turnovers. That's a formula for Youngstown State to win by quite a margin. I'm going Youngstown State by a lot.
Yeah, I'll read Edge's prediction real quick because it kind of coincides with mine. He said, I think JMU is better than the record shows, and it will be closer than most think, but YSU pulls it out late to win by 13. I'm going to agree with him. I'm going to say YSU pulls it out late, like 4th quarter late, 31-21. So I'm saying 21-21 at the end of the 3rd quarter. YSU scores 10 in the 4th, wins 31-21.
A reaction, Door, to one of our guests here saying you're due for a drubbing?
Oh, man. It's not going to be... not many people know, but week 1 of last season, my first game in FFCS, I got to play Uga. And boy, that was a drubbing. It ended like 77-28, I think it was. So I've been used to a drubbing. If it turns out this way, then so be it, you know.
I think what he meant to say is Skip is no longer invited on CAA Today. That's what I heard. Next, we'll turn our attention to VMI at Robert Morris. This is a matchup between 2 teams that have struggled. They find themselves at the bottom of the CAA power rankings. I still think there's a chance that VMI flips the switch this season and gets rolling again. It might be this week. They're going to have to overcome what is the CAA's worst turnover differential so far at -7. Give me VMI 28-17.
I'm going to go against you with this one. VMI has been sliding, and I think they're going to keep sliding. I take Robert Morris and their dynamic offense by 9.
I'm not sure I have a prediction for it, but these are the 2 worst ranked CAA teams. So I don't know what that amounts to, but it could be close. Who knows?
A 0-0 draw. So Edge said that I keep saying that VMI is too good to have this kind of a season, and that's true. I feel like a broken record at this point. But Edge says it's too hard to see a VMI turnaround at this point. He's going to go with Robert Morris by 10. Dorr said that VMI has been on a downward slide as well. He's calling it a sophomore slump, VMI. But he has Robert Morris by 7. Got it, Dorr. Last but not least, we have William and Mary both taking on Towson collectively. After defeating Albany, W&M now holds both the Magna Carta and the overall CAA belt, which I believe, I forget the name of it. Someone can remind me or have it pulled up in front of me. Dora, do you remember?
I think it's the Roanoke
Memorial.
There we go, Roanoke Memorial belt. So William and Mary holds both of these belts. Towson has a chance to steal all this hardware this week. I think they get to 2-0 all time against William and Mary with a 42-35 win.
Yeah, I'll go
Yeah,
Towson here. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think I'm going to go with that big smash and grab analogy there. I think I'm going to definitely go in. Well, sorry, apologies with what's happening over in the States, but yes, that's what I think is going to happen. I think I've got to try and keep this momentum going. Try not to bleed my own hype too much, but yeah, just keep the management going, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think you'll keep the momentum going. All your losses have been close losses, so I think you might have a big win here.
I also think that Towson is going to win. Bobo is good, but I think Mr. D is a better coach. I think that Towson's probably going to win by at least 7.
Ruining the sweep, going Bobo by 10.
It's gonna be a tough game. Mr. G is a great coach. I'll be the first to admit that I'm not the most active manager, so it's gonna be a tough challenge to go up against him. But I don't know. Got to bet on myself. I think I can pull this out. Could be a pretty low scoring affair. I think this is gonna be a pretty defensive game. So I'm gonna give it to William and Mary 17-10.
There you go. Oh, it's everyone's favorite segment, Listener Topics. We have a new sponsor for Listener Topics here.
Oh yeah, I should get into that.
For it.
Thought we needed a little spice, so I've enlisted a sponsorship of Naki's Fellows Fighting Federation. We just kind of mess around with Fire Pro Wrestling, and we upload YouTube videos of it. So I encourage you guys to go check them out. I'm sure you could DM Naki with some questions.
Very good. So huge sponsorship, going to be lots of dollars flowing into the CAA now, thanks to Naki. This first question was submitted by Chattanooga and by Charleston Southern. They asked about our thoughts on quality losses. In other words, they be looked at, how influential are they? Specifically, how should Nova's losses be? Edge had some thoughts here. He said, I think quality losses alone aren't important. They're a part of other measurements that are more important. Also think that earlier in the season, it's less of a factor, but as the season goes on, the context of how everyone's season unfolds, that they will help decide between really close teams. I personally think right now, based on the coaches poll, there aren't many losses better than his 2 right now, but we still have to see how the rest of the season plays out.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I'm thinking like quality losses compared with like a strength of schedule. So if I was 4-1 and my loss was to like Palo or like Judge, or Brady, and a team like Colgate, which shout out to Too Much Sauce, was 5-0 but had no ranked wins, I think I should be ranked high. Too Much Sauce.
Jake had a question for us. Describe the season in one word. The word here is upheaval. Between big upsets, coaches returning from the FBS, a changing of the guard, and some conferences, this has been a season of upheaval.
My one word was entertaining. Speaks for itself, but mainly in conference, the amount of growth that the CAA has had from last year to this year it's made it a lot. It's a better experience this year, and I'm happy to be a part of it.
Yeah, we're happy you are too.
I'll say my word is unpredictable. Other than those top 4 teams that are undefeated, I think there's a lot of parity in this league, and it's hard to predict what's going to happen. So I'll say unpredictable.
I'm going to go with Door as well and say that it has been very entertaining. I am a guy that loves offense. I love fun games, activity in the channel as well. It's a great season so far.
Next up, this question was submitted by Ampersand. In fairness to him, it was submitted last week for this out-of-conference week. He asked what the path to 500 is in the CAA for out-of-conference play. The path now looks pretty clear. We went 9-3 this week, which actually got us back to 500. So it's not going to be too much of a challenge in week 8. We just have to go 6-6 to stay at 500. And I think we have a lot of new coaches this season who have really found their groove. So I actually think we'll do better than that and finish above 500. Next up, Charleston Southern asked, will the FCS or the FBS be the more attractive location this offseason? I think it's the FCS. We've seen a lot of coaches returning. So I'm going to say FCS.
I'm going to kind of read off of Edge's answer again. He says that it depends on if you want to be associated with the real world and because of like your favorite or known teams. But the community of FCS has and always will bring former coaches back. And my kind of answer is it depends on what you want. Like, do you want a team like, if I wanted a team like Nebraska, or do I want to be in like a community like the FCS? And right now, my answer is FCS. And we've seen many coaches already come back. We've seen Tenney come back. We've seen Habes came back, I'm pretty sure. And we saw Keogh come back. So right now, my answer is FCS, but we will see.
Yale asked, assuming their old school has a coach, conferences would be most attractive to returning FCS coaches. Obviously, we've heard a lot of noise that coaches might want to team up in the America East. I think that there are some other conferences that still hold a lot of weight with coaches from previous seasons, the Big Sky, the Ivy, and the A-Sun. I don't think the CAA is going to have a lot of turnover this offseason. Probably not many coaching vacancies. But whatever coaching vacancies we have, I do think that the CAA will be a more attractive option this offseason.
I'll say the Ivy League is probably one of the most attractive conferences because you're in the FCS, but you have a known team. You have a popular team. Also, the Ivy League isn't very strong right now. There's a few teams at the top, but the rest of the Ivy League is not having a great season. So I'll say that the Ivy League is an attractive conference to come back to.
I'm kind of reading the crowd here. Not that we have much of a crowd, but I'm actually going to say the American East because I really think Uga is going to go back because Stony Brook will like let him have his team again. And then I think you could possibly see Tenney come over. You could possibly see Habes go over to the American East. So I could see them, if they get those coaches, I could see them being a powerhouse next year.
Asked, what have your thoughts been on the overtime classics? Let someone else this one.
I'll go for it. It's been pretty fun, kind of slow because of human reffing, but it's always good to have something to do during this like little dead space that we have between game days.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree that this is a fun sort of thing to do. I'll wait to see how it pans out, but it's looking really good so far.
I agree. It's obviously tough scheduling with the human refs, so it's going to take a little longer. But anything that brings more football, I think, is a good thing. He asked, "What are your thoughts on a potential Week 8 matchup between Poly and Youngstown State in the Overtime Classic?" I think it could be really interesting. Cal Poly is obviously a really good coach. I would expect them to be highly ranked at that point. So if I'm playing them, that would obviously mean that Youngstown State is still highly ranked. Oh, that would be a high-flying matchup. A lot of fun.
Oh yeah. Anytime you have two potential top 10 teams going off with each other, facing off against each other, that'll be a fun game to go through and watch.
And Fruity also asked, what are your thoughts on the return of the more established coaches like Habes to Sac State, Mason to Dixie State, Tenney to Idaho State, and especially the fact that some of those teams have been among the worst in the FCS so far this season in terms of record and the ranking. I think anytime a bad team gets better and we have a more competitive league, so that's going to be a great thing. Example of that is Towson. Towson really struggled historically. We've got a good coach in there, and that's great for the CAA and great for FFCS.
Yeah, it's always good to bring in more talent. Just like you said, great to have good players back, and great to see them filling up the struggling teams instead of sticking with the teams that are like the well-known teams. Good to see Tenney to Idaho State, which was really struggling. They were like 0-4, and Mason back to Dixie State, who I also think was 0-4.
Absolutely. We're at our last three questions here, so three more to go. Pilo asked, which two teams do you think will be playing in the CAA championship? I'll read Edge's answer here. He said, this is a tough one to call so early in the conference season. Even though he's the only team in the North that's 2-0, he still thinks that Youngstown State is the favorite. In the South, even though William and Mary is also 2-0, he thinks Delaware is the favorite. So he said if he had to guess, he would say we get YSU and Delaware in a rematch of their week 4 game.
Yeah, I'll agree to that. YSU with the best rushing offense and Delaware with the best passing offense, right? Or that might be wrong, but that would be a good game to watch.
Delaware and YSU are number 1 and number 2 in rushing.
Oh, okay. So number 1 and number 2 in rushing. There you go. It's going to be 0 passing.
I'm gonna agree with you. It's gonna be a great game if they both play. If you were thinking of number 1 passing offense, Skip, that's actually me, but
Delaware State. I apologize.
I'm probably not gonna get there. So it's either gonna be Youngstown State and Delaware or Villanova in Delaware. Either game is gonna be great.
I'm going with that second matchup you mentioned. I think Nova wins the North. They have a 1-game head start right now over me. I think it's going to be tough. I really need to run the table in order to get to the conference championship in all likelihood, which is obviously tough to do in a strong conference. So I think Nova holds on to the North, and I think Delaware gets through in the South.
Call it a shocker, but I am going to go with the lesser known 2-0 team in the division of the CAA South. So I'm going William and Mary. And I'm going to say Nova's going to win the North because of that 1-game head start that they have. So it'll be Nova, William, and Mary, CCG.
Another Pilo question. How many teams will the CAA have ranked in the coaches poll this week?
I'm going to go with 3. I'm going to be Morgan State, Youngstown State, and Delaware. And there is a remote possibility that Edge sneaks in, but I'm just going to stay with those 3 for
Yeah, this was released before we had access to the. This question was asked before we had access to the early poll. I said 3, MSU, YSU, and Delaware. Nova is definitely going to be receiving votes, so.
I'm holding out hope for 4. It's not looking good. Is in the others receiving votes, but we're not close enough to make a charge into the top 25 this week. So 3 is likely going to be the right answer, although I'd like to see Villanova get in there. This question comes from Yale. Who are some sleeper teams in the CAA that the league needs to keep their eyes on? Edge said Morgan State. He said he knows they're 4-1, but they're one of the better 4-1 teams with their only loss being by 1 point. He still thinks Duquesne should be good despite a bad loss this week. I agree. I think Morgan State is probably the team that I would point to as the team that is being slept on, Benny. Seems like they're finally going to get their dues with a ranking.
I also agree that Morgan State is probably the team that's being most slept on. They're a quiet 4-1, but they are 4-1. So,
yeah, they're 4-1. They could be 5-0. It's very they 1-2 point conversion. They're 5-0 and possibly top 10, top 5. So yeah, definitely Morgan State.
Well, everyone, I think that wraps up our coverage of Week 5 CAA Today. Thank you to our guests, Scar and Skip. We appreciated having the America East Conference on. And as always, good luck to everyone this week. Stay safe, and we will see you in 2 weeks' time.
Appreciate that. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for having us. This was a blast, and good luck.
Yeah, thank you guys for all coming. Appreciate it. Good show.